What happened to me? I've been gone for a month, right? I feel bad. I'm going to get into that in a whole separate video. I'm just going to focus today on the issue of hurricanes. But I was nailed by Hurricane Helene. I have had no power until yesterday. It was 13 days without power. I fell behind with the school. I was able to teach 3 seminars today. Next week, I'm doing I don't know how many to try to catch up. So that's what this video is for. It's for the victims of Hurricane Helene. And now we're dealing with Hurricane Milton that just crossed through Florida. I woke up this morning. I saw it already crossed Florida about 5 or 6 o'clock this morning. But that's what I'm here for today. You're going to face issues, whether it's trying to extend payments on your cell phone, mortgage, or even terminating your lease. And I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself because I had to go through this yesterday. Luckily, I knew this area of law, so I was able to cancel this contract. So listen to what I went through. I have a satellite internet provider. That lease ends November 29th. I already contacted them 2 months ago and said I'm not extending the lease because I found something much cheaper and it's working better for me anyway. But now my lease is expiring, and guess what? My satellite dish has damages. So I'm thinking this is pointless to extend this lease for another basically month and a half when it doesn't work. And it's easy to prove that I've had no power because the internet hasn't been used with either provider, obviously, for two. I didn't have cell phone for maybe 3 or 4 days. Um, so I would have to go into town and do all that in order to be able to charge my laptop. And it was days later because there was still no cell phone connection in this area. But what are you going to do if you're like me that you have this lease? I could tell you what they told me initially. They said, we'll cancel the contract, work out a payment plan towards the balance. I'm like, why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to save 100 and something dollars, right? So a little aggressive. I had to explain to them because I already looked it up before that this is an act of God. And because it's an act of God, this contract is going to be terminated. Now, let me explain what that means. If you have your cell phone, for example, you haven't worked. First place, you might have not had your cell phone for 4 or 5 days, so definitely try to seek a credit there. But it also means we haven't been working. Maybe there's still people. I woke up this morning and I heard generators, so I know there's people, on day 14 now that don't have power just down the street from me. I want to say like 3 or 4 lots over. So what happens when you say, can I extend the payments? And they say no, or no, we're not going to terminate this lease. Now, it's got to be a lease like in my situation, it's about to end. It's not going to be a lease, you owe $10,000 to Bank of America and say, I can't afford it. That's it. No, you would eventually, when things get back to normal, you will be legally obligated to continue. But let me explain what the act of God clause is. An act of God means just that a natural disaster, something you have no control over, has affected the ability to perform this contract. I have a contract with the satellite company, right? I pay them, they give me satellite in return so I can watch TV and go on the internet and do my videos, right? That act of God can't be done because I'm in this area and I have this satellite dish that isn't working. They didn't want to give it to me. They were saying no. I told them on section whatever, paragraph whatever, there's your act of God clause. It was right there, clear as day. I told them your other option is come install a new satellite, new router, and then come pick it up in 6 weeks, which would be ridiculous. But that's where the act of God would protect you. For example, a while back ago, I had a lease. It was actually during COVID. And at that point, I was saying, okay, I'm going to start focusing on other things, teaching and everything else. This is going to be a good time to wrap up the business. Problem was, is there an act of God clause? It wouldn't matter because I could have sublet anyway. But I'll explain to you how that act of God clause protects you. If the building, act of God, you cannot come with anything more than that than this issue with COVID, where all these businesses were shut down for months. If that was a situation, you could always argue this is an act of God. It's either in the contract, and I'll be clear right now. Probably the overwhelming majority of contracts have an act of God clause, but it don't. Then that's something that's going to get argued in a trial, or in a court if it ends up being in a lawsuit, let's say from a landlord. But that's how you would get out of the lease. You would just basically say, this is an act of God. I can't stay here. I have to move. So, for example, the landlord would say that. If the landlord says, the roof came off this property and there you go, this is an act of God. I can't fix this overnight. This is going to take time. That's how the landlord would break the lease. The problem is creditors are always willing to break the lease. They just don't like when you break the lease. But the same thing, where I'm at, a lot of people, it's going to be happening everywhere. People are relocating to go back to their parents into their original states and all that. Well, if you have an apartment lease for 12 months and you're 8 months into it, you still have 4 months left. That deficiency doesn't go away legally. You can walk out of the apartment and people think, oh, I don't owe anything because I walked out. That's not the case. Um, if you have first, last, and security, they have 1 month that they can recover from, but then there's 3 more months they can sue you on. The act of God clause is what will get you out of that. Say, this is an act of God. I've lost my job. There's a building here that had like 50 vendors and they're not going to rebuild. So these are now 50 people. They're going to have to figure out how to lift up their business. So that act of God would be an example saying this disaster area, that's easy to prove, right? FEMA's there, whatever, it's been declared a national disaster area by FEMA, your state and local government. You could say, because of this act of God issue, I'm relocating back to wherever, Idaho, Texas, whatever. I cannot fulfill the terms of this contract. Remember, look at it from another perspective. If it was the landlord, they'll be saying they can't perform. And if it's somebody like a creditor, like a satellite company, they're like, so what? You have to look at your contract. There's probably going to be an act of God clause there. Take advantage of it. That's when you call up these companies and say you need to extend payments and they tell you no, which they should do anyway normally. Then the answer is review the agreement, refer it to act of God clause. Even if it's not there, let's just suppose for whatever reason it wasn't included in there. That's possible, especially something smaller like a landlord, not a big major corporation. Same thing. Make that argument and say this is an act of God issue. They can Google it themselves and see that it's impossible for this contract to continue to move forward. Now, this doesn't mean you're wiping out your $10,000 balance. Like I said, the act of God clause in that scenario would be, delay payments for 2 or 3 months until you get back on your feet, and then we can work on it. But it does work well with leases. Like I said, I wasn't able to use my office for months. A lot of people went through that to COVID. When you have these areas that are natural disaster, same thing. It's, you have apartments that you can't move back into or homes. That's the perfect time to use that clause to avoid legal liability. Okay. Any questions whatsoever, like always, feel free to post them. I have disappeared for a month because I'll tell you why. Around the first week of September, I got COVID for about 2 weeks. I got hit pretty hard with this thing. So people say COVID never exists or whatever, pure gibberish. Second time I got in 2019. Um, right when I was recovering and just had a dry cough, which I still have. Then came on that Thursday, September 27th, I think it was, Hurricane Helene. So we left the state, came back the next day, and then we spent 13 days without power. So I haven't been able to post videos. I was emailing the university that I wasn't able to teach the courses. And after like 4 or 5 days, I was able to go into town when they finally had cell phone service and start going to the coffee shops to charge up my battery, etc. But I mean, I saw 2 cell towers just cut in half. So it's crazy what we saw with this hurricane. So my heart goes out to you. Being from South Florida, I've dealt with more hurricanes than I feel like saying. Um, Milton has ravaged the state. I was watching, now I had power, I was able to go online and look at all these videos. I saw tornadoes everywhere, even where my family used to live. They had just moved out of that area, but Wellington in Florida, I've seen issues in Yeehawk Junction. I used to go there all the time to fill up the gas. That was one of my stops on my motorcycle trips, always guaranteed. Um, Fort Myers, Broward had a huge tornado. So again, my heart goes out to you. If there's anything I can do with you facing these issues, you have a question, just post them down there below. You now know the act of God clause that will protect you. That should get you to extend the payments on your credit cards, utility bills, whatever it might be. They tend to be flexible, but you never know. Like I said, look at this company yesterday. After 2 years of making payments, they now want to extend this contract all the way through and not terminate it. And I said, fine, come replace the broken dish and then come back in 5 weeks later and pick it up, which would be absolutely absurd. I even ended up getting a credit for all this time frame that I didn't have power of the 13 days. So keep that in mind, okay? So thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please be safe. I hope all is well after this last hurricane. Like I said, man, I feel your pain. 13 days without power. I was fixing stuff at the house. Tomorrow they're knocking down two trees directly behind me. There's some two trees that have to be knocked down. They're way too close to the house. They're tilted like this. As long as I get through today, tomorrow they'll knock down those trees. But I felt I'm going backwards. All of a sudden, I kind of tripped, held up my balance, rolled my ankle, and spent like 4 days limping. So now to jump in my truck to go get coffee just so I can charge my batteries is like a major project. Parking and walking. I mean, it's been when it rains, it pours. What do you want me to tell you? So stay safe, stay strong, man. We've been through this. We can do it again. The communities always come together during these difficult times, and of course we'll do it again, as I've seen already. I've seen people just volunteers come from another state. They've got a tractor or something. They just drive down and they're sleeping in their truck and just, how can I help you? So it's tough. It's emotional to see that, and I'm glad. That's at the end of the day. Unfortunately, sometimes these things are needed for us to pull together, but we pull together, right? So hang in there. If you got a question about the act of God clause, post it in the comment section below. I'll be happy to respond to you. But that is the way to protect yourself. Remember, this is something, an act of God clause couldn't be simpler. It is beyond your control. It is impossible for you to move forward with this contract. So, for example, suppose I make, we always say in law school, okay, here's how I can prove I'm in a hurricane. Water bottles. I never do this stuff. Let's say I was delivering 2,000. I'm the guy that makes the bottle, right? And I'm delivering it to you. And now my factory where I make this got leveled by a tornado. And I was supposed to deliver to you 2,000 empty bottles by next week. Act of God. My location has been destroyed. There's no way I can produce this. So there's not going to be a lawsuit because I'm just going to argue act of God. I can't control this. I'll make the bottles. I need power. I don't have power. I don't have a generator that can run the entire factory, etc. So there's your perfect example. All right. Act of God. Use it to protect yourself. Don't put up with these creditors, these satellite companies that were trying to do what they did to me yesterday. All right. Take care, everyone. I hope everyone is safe. Those of you down in Florida, I know no power for a while, but you'll get through it. Okay. Take care, everybody.